Sister, come back. Please wake up. Here is your soul. Look at what I've trapped inside this glass jar just to keep you with me. I took it from Kub-ilihan, the hidden sanctuary where the dead visit the living. I can't live without you, sister. That's why I broke its ancient laws to reunite you with your body.
They tell you that the hardest part of sudden death is the silence that follows it, but that is a lie. The silence is loud. Am I guilt? It drove me straight into the shadows of a magical underworld hidden in the heart of Divisoria. My sister Nell was the anchor of my life. When our parents left, she became the roof over my head, the food on my table, and the strict, tired voice telling me to grow up. The last morning she was alive, I heard her soft, hesitant knocking at my bedroom door. I knew she wanted to talk. I knew she wanted to smooth over the petty argument we had the night before, but I was stubborn. For reasons I still cannot explain, I chose to ignore her. I pulled the blanket over my head and pretended to be fast asleep, listening to her footsteps softly fade away down the hallway. I went to my university classes that day completely guilt-free, thinking I would just apologize to her over dinner. I thought time was a luxury we had in abundance. But when I came home that afternoon, the house was entirely empty. The lights were off. The silence in the living room felt strange, heavy, and cold. Nell was never late. She was the most punctual person I knew, her life structured around making sure I was taken care of. Then, the phone rang. It was a call from the hospital. They told me there had been a robbery gone wrong at the convenience store near her office. A stray bullet. A sudden, chaotic moment on a regular Tuesday afternoon. And just like that, she was gone. She died on a cold concrete floor, surrounded by strangers, while I was sitting in a lecture hall miles away, still holding on to my petty silence. She left this world trying to knock on my door, and my final gift to her was pretending she wasn't there. How do you survive a grief like that? How do you breathe when your throat is clogged with a confession you can never say out loud? In the weeks that followed the burial, the guilt rotted my mind. I couldn't sleep, and the silence in our empty house became an active, suffocating entity. When you are that broken, your mind stops functioning on logic. You start clawing at the dark, searching for anything, no matter how impossible to undo the damage. That was when an old campus rumor crawled back into my head. Months ago, a student from another department had passed away, but a bizarre story had circulated around the dorms. People claimed they saw the girl standing by the second-floor window of her family's house just days after her funeral. At the time, my friends and I had laughed it off over coffee, dismissing it as a cruel neighborhood joke or a typical ghost story. But grief strips away your skepticism. What used to be a joke suddenly became my only thread of hope. Driven by a desperate, silent madness, I looked up the deceased student's address and traveled to their neighborhood. I spent hours waiting in the shadows until I saw her mother walking home from the wet market. I followed her silently. When she entered her home, I stood across the street, my eyes glued to their second-floor window. And then my breath caught. Through the dusty glass, I saw a silhouette. It looked exactly like the daughter. Moving, living, breathing. To my broken mind, it was the only confirmation I needed. I rushed across the street and pounded on their door. When the mother opened it, I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face, and begged her. I told her about Nell. I told her about the knocking I ignored. I begged her to tell me how she brought her daughter back. The mother looked at me with hollow, glassy eyes. She reached out, gripped my trembling shoulders with a terrifying, desperate strength, and whispered the secret she used to defy death. She told me about a cosmic tear in the fabric of the city, a place hidden in the absolute thick of Manila's busiest wholesale trading hub. She called it Kub-ilihan. Upon entering the shop, it will reveal its secrets, but you cannot enter without paying. She told me Kub-ilihan does not accept the currency of the living world. Pesos mean nothing to the ancient forces that govern the dead. To dissolve the barrier and open the invisible door, you must pay with something born of nature, patience, and silent sorrow. You must pay with the luha ng puso ng saging, the mystical sap that drips from the tip of a wild banana heart at exactly midnight. Because Divisoria is a concrete jungle of asphalt and exhaust fumes, wild banana trees do not grow there. The currency is incredibly scarce. Armed with the instructions of a madwoman, the desperation took over my body. I packed a single bag and traveled out of the city, chasing the setting sun into the rural fringes where the concrete finally gave way to earth. I wandered into the shadow groves at twilight, my hands shaking as I searched for a wild, uncultivated heart hanging from the leaves. When the clock crept close to midnight, I stood beneath the heavy, dark purple petal of a wild banana heart. I held a tiny glass vial beneath its tip, waiting in absolute breathless silence. Precisely at the stroke of 12, a single, thick, translucent drop of sap formed at the edge. It fell into my vial, glowing with a faint, ethereal luminescence. The tears of a banana heart, the key to the underworld. I took that vial and flew back to the city, arriving at Santo Cristo Street when the wholesale vendors had rolled down their iron shutters. Standing in a narrow, dead-end alley between two towering sugar warehouses, I uncapped the vial. Following the mother's whispered instructions, I didn't knock. I didn't call out. Instead, I poured the precious glowing drops of midnight sap directly onto the cold, blank concrete wall. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, the concrete greedily drank the fluid. Instantly, the heavy smell of industrial wax and raw sugar vanished, replaced by the sweet, thick scent of damp forest earth. The blank wall before me shimmered like water, dissolving to reveal a rustic, ancient wooden doorway glowing with a soft, timeless light. The price was paid. The barrier was gone. I stepped through, and the chaotic rumble of Manila was completely severed. It was a vacuum of absolute, beautiful silence. Inside, Ang Kub-ilihan finally revealed its magnificent secrets, opening up into a towering sanctuary. There were no shopkeepers, no guards, and no signs. Hanging from the high wooden rafters were hundreds of glowing, woven silk cocoons, pulsing gently like soft, synchronized heartbeats. I understood the magic instinctively. The souls of the dead do not live here permanently. These cocoons are merely temporary vessels waiting to be activated so a soul can cross the great divide to communicate with the living. Above me, without me having to say a word, a single cocoon began to pulse with a faint lavender hue, the exact color of the dress Nell wore to her college graduation. The transaction was complete. The sanctuary gave me the rules without speaking a word. Go home, lock your doors, and wait. I left the shop, crossed back into the noisy reality of Manila, and rushed back to our empty apartment. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring into the dark, my heart hammering against my ribs. And then it happened. From the open window, a magnificent large violet butterfly fluttered into the room. A mariposa, its wings glowing with the unmistakable tender memory of my sister's soul. It didn't make a sound. It couldn't speak. It just drifted through the air, landing softly on my trembling hand. For a few beautiful, heartbreaking minutes, I felt her. The air in the room suddenly smelled of the cheap baby powder she always used after a long day of work. She crawled up to my forearm, a silent, forgiving gesture that meant more than 1,000 sentences. But on the nightstand, the small candle I had lit upon arriving home began to gutter. The flame danced wildly, throwing long, desperate shadows against the wall. The mariposa began to lift its wings, untangling itself from my fingers, preparing to float back out the window to return its essence to the sanctuary. In that moment, the raw, ugly selfishness of my grief took over. I couldn't do it. I couldn't let her float back out into the dark Manila night. I couldn't accept that this tiny, silent interaction was the final punctuation mark to our entire lives together. My mind fractured under the weight of the impending goodbye. Before her wings could reach the open window, I grabbed a heavy glass jar from my desk. With a swift, desperate motion, I snapped it through the air, trapping the violet mariposa inside. I screwed the metal lid tight, ignoring the frantic, violent beating of her wings against the glass. I broke the ancient laws of Ang Kub-ilihan. I turned a visiting soul into a prisoner. Driven by madness and old superstitions, I fled the apartment. I carried the jar through the midnight rain, straight to Manila North Cemetery, where Nell's body had been laid to rest just days before. I knelt in the mud before her concrete tombstone, pressing the glass jar against the cold stone, trying to perform a forbidden resurrection ritual I had only heard of in terrifying bedtime stories. I tried to force the soul from the butterfly back into the corpse. But the universe does not bend to the demands of a broken heart. The ritual failed. The concrete remained dead and cold. The body did not move. And inside the jar, the violet mariposa only grew more frantic, its wings bruising against the glass. As the realization of my failure washed over me, a terrible, suffocating paranoia took hold of my mind. The wind howled through the mausoleums, sounding like a chorus of angry voices. I looked around the empty graveyard, and in my guilt-ridden state, the shadows of the tombs began to stretch, twisting into grotesque, faceless entities with jagged limbs. I believed that by crossing the forbidden line, I had alerted the soulless spirits of the city. I thought they were hunting me, chasing me through the dark, hungry to tear the jar from my hands so they could consume my sister's soul and live as humans. I clutched the jar to my chest and ran. The sprint from the cemetery back to Divisoria was a living nightmare. The rain slicked the asphalt, reflecting the harsh, bleeding pink and blue neon lights of closed market stalls. Every street sweeper pushing a broom looked like a monster waiting to ambush me. Every homeless vendor sleeping under a tarp looked like a creature shifting in the dark. My breath came in ragged, burning gasps, my feet splashing through muddy puddles as I guarded the glass jar with my life. Finally, coughing and wheezing, I collapsed against the blank concrete wall of Santo Cristo Street. I didn't have any currency left to buy a service, but I had to get inside to escape the horrors chasing me. I fumbled through my bag and found the absolute lost, forgotten drop of midnight sap clinging to the bottom of the vial. I splashed it onto the wall. The doorway shimmers open. I dived inside, crashing onto the wooden floorboards of Kub-ilihan. The heavy wooden door slammed shut behind me. Instantly, a deep wave of relief washed over me. The chaotic, terrifying noise of Manila completely vanished. The rain, the wind, the roaring engines, and the growls of the monsters dropped into a dead, heavy silence. Safe. I was finally safe. Thinking that the danger was gone, that I could simply walk back out into the regular city and figure out what to do next, I turned around and opened the heavy wooden door. But when the door swung open, the streets of Divisoria weren't there. Instead, I was staring out into a completely different, unrecognizable surrounding, a silent, misty forest that I had never seen before in my life. Panic seized my throat. I slammed the door shut, my heart racing. I gripped the handle, took a deep breath, and threw it open a second time. This time, the forest was gone. Outside the threshold lay an empty, crumbling concrete highway stretching under an endless, starless black sky. I slammed it shut again. I opened it a third time. A roaring, desolated ocean cliff. Every single time I opened the door, it gave me a completely different, alien location. None of them were home. None of them were the world I belonged to. A cold, heavy sense of dread settled into my bones. The truth crashed down on me with the weight of a physical blow. The entities in the streets weren't the ones trapping me. The sanctuary itself had locked its gates. Because I had violated its sacred laws. Because I had stolen a soul and brought it here in chains. The corridors of this place had twisted. I was trapped here. Lost in an endless looping maze of dimensions, with no way back to the living world. The absolute despair of my situation broke the last of my strength. My knees buckled, and I slowly slumped onto the rustic floorboards, my back sliding down against the unyielding wood of the door. As I hit the floor, my fingers lost their grip. The heavy glass jar rolled out from my hands, spinning across the floorboards. It hit the base of a stone pillar with a sharp click, and the loose metal lid popped completely open. I gasped, reaching out, but it was too late. The violet mariposa flew out of its glass prison. I braced myself, expecting her to soar straight to the rafters, to escape from the monster who had caged her, but she didn't fly away. Instead, the butterfly drifted softly through the warm gold and lavender light of the room, circling low before landing gently, right on the palm of my open hand. "I'm sorry, Ate," I whispered into the quiet sanctuary, the tears finally breaking free, raw and unburdened by paranoia. "I'm so sorry." The weakened violet mariposa rested on the palm of my hand. For a moment, it didn't move. Then, its wings flared with a sudden, brilliant flash of lavender light, brighter than it had ever been. It lifted into the air, fluttering softly around my face. It leaned in, its wings gently brushing against my wet cheek one last time. It was a touch that carried no anger, no resentment. Only peace, only forgiveness. I watched through a blur of tears as the butterfly floated gracefully upward, higher and higher into the shadows of the rafters, until it merged seamlessly back into its silk cocoon, settling its energy back where it belonged. The moment her essence faded back into the silk, a sudden blinding memory flashed in my mind. The old, forgotten folklore rule of the exit. The voice of my elders echoed through the fog of my grief, sharp and clear. The market exists in an inverted spatial dimension. To leave, you must perform the act of Pagbabaligdid. If you do not turn your clothes inside out, you will walk its looping corridors forever. The sanctuary hadn't locked me out of malice. It was waiting for me to align myself with its laws. To leave the world of the magical and the dead, I had to be willing to look unpolished, exposed, and backward to the regular world. With trembling but certain hands, I stood up. I grabbed the hem of my soaked university shirt, pulled it over my head, and tore it completely inside out. I turned back to the door, gripped the handle, and pulled. The misty forests and empty highways were gone. Outside the threshold, the dark, rain-slicked asphalt of Santo Cristo Street lay waiting under the dim yellow streetlights of Divisoria. The familiar scent of industrial wax and raw sugar drifted back into the room. The weight in my chest was gone. The silence of the city was no longer screaming at me. "Goodbye, my sister. Rest now. I will be okay." I stepped through the doorway, letting the entrance of Kub-ilihan shimmer and vanish into the plain concrete wall behind me. Walking back into the waking world, looking undone and backward to anyone who might see me, I finally smiled through my tears.
Hi there, Raya here. This episode marked the beginning of a new journey, born of a simple question. If you are given a chance to rewrite your biggest mistake, what price would you be willing to pay? Ang Kub-ilihan isn't just a magical shop. It's a mirror for the heaviest silence we carry. The words we left unsaid before someone was suddenly gone. When grief paralyzes us, our own guilt can construct monsters, making us trap our memories in a glass jar, cause saying goodbye feels like breaking apart. But healing doesn't mean staying trapped in regret. Sometimes, to walk back into the light, we have to let ourselves be entirely turned upside down by our grief. We have to forgive ourselves for simply being human. To anyone drowning in a silent "I'm sorry" that can no longer be delivered, I hope this story gives you the words you couldn't say. Let the guilt rest. They forgive you. Before I say goodnight, the sanctuary of Kub-ilihan doesn't just deal in tragedy. Next time, the visitors from the other side come back with a bit of a sting. We'll meet a husband looking for a hidden fortune, only to find out his late wife's very loud, very angry way of correcting his mistakes, involving a window, a misunderstanding, and a swarm of bees. What do you think I'll have to flip inside out to survive? Let me know in the comments. Rest now and take a deep breath. You are going to be okay.